Hey, welcome to another episode of the Aaron Running Podcast. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching, for those who have been watching, and for my subscribers. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do that. It just really helps grow this channel and helps with the algorithm. And also, if you can, make sure you hit the like button. Again, that just really helps. And leave a comment too. For today's episode, I'm going to have a guest. I know last one was more of a solo one. And so today I'm going to have on Titus Folks. And let me just add him in here. Titus, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Hey, thanks for coming on. So just to get us started, can you share a little bit about yourself? Just like
Yes.
what do you do? You know, are you a family man? Where you're located? Things like that.
Yeah, I am in Boise, Idaho, which is booming. It's wonderful. Everyone from California and Oregon and Washington is coming here right now, and mostly the conservative Christians are the ones actually showing up. So it's going great. But I have two toddlers, a wife, great church. We're in the OPC. Things are just going good. I came from a background of the military. Then I was in the nonprofit world for a while, working for pro-life organizations. And now I run a recruiting firm and have a job board newsletter that we're going to be discussing.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for covering that. Yeah, Idaho, I know everybody is moving there. I know, I'm in California, you know, I'm in the central part of California, which is very conservative area. But there was a time, like during the whole 2020 thing, where we started looking at all the red states and we're like, hey, do we need to move if they're going to, try to force vaccinate our kids to go to school and things like that. So Idaho is one of the places that we were looking at. But I do love California. I know it's can be very liberal, but born and raised here, I've lived in southern, central, and northern. Yeah, it's a beautiful state. The politics are just terrible.
Yeah.
All
Idaho is
right.
the one state in the Pacific Northwest that has that beauty but doesn't have the awful politics. So that's why we're getting such an influx of people right now.
Yeah, for sure. I've known a couple people that have moved out there. And so when did you move to Idaho exactly? Sorry, I know you mentioned it.
Just about 2 years ago. Before that, I was in Indiana, and I'm a military kid. I've just lived everywhere all my life. So lived in California for a bit too.
Right on. Let's see. So the conservative job board. I know that's how I first discovered you. So can you tell me just a little bit about that? Like, when did you start it? Why did you start it? Where'd you get this idea to do a conservative job board? You know?
Yeah, so I worked in the conservative nonprofit space, and sort of like pastoral ministry, it's hard to find the jobs you're going to do next, and it's hard to find out where you're going to be plugged in. And nonprofits have another issue, and they have less of a talent funnel than like the ministry would have. And a lot of people self-select out of it. So instead of going and working for a job right out of college that can make them 50,000, you could go at a nonprofit and make probably 40,000. And so people know, hey, I'm going to make less money doing this. I might even work more hours. And so it's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people to enter, even though it's passionate work, it's necessary, it's meaningful. And so you have this kind of talent problem with people wanting to find things that support their family better, right? And so people still do it, and you can still move up in it, and you can still have specialties and make good money. And there's a little bit of a component of sacrifice of being involved in it, but it's often worth it. Like if you're very pro-life, you're like, this is what I want to be involved in. Working for a pro-life organization is great. If you want to be involved in campus ministry and you're inspired by people like Charlie Kirk, and you want to go on campus and witness to people, working for a group like Reformed University Fellowship is a great way to do it, right? So it's worth it. It's meaningful work, but there's a gap in terms of people's knowledge of what's available and what's possible within it. So one thing I ran into was looking at the job boards that do exist in the nonprofit space, especially the conservative space. They'd often have like 5 new jobs a month, right, listed on the job board. It's like, well, this isn't even worth it. It's not like Indeed where you have a couple options. It's like, well, here's the option fundraising for the month that appeared. And there's more than that out there. It's just not everyone was using those sources. So what I started doing is I started aggregating my own jobs and then sending them out in a newsletter. So it's been just a little bit over 2 years, and I have about 6,000 subscribers, and that's all organic. I didn't pay for any sort of boost or anything like that. I wasn't running digital ads. I was just telling people, hey, I'm spending 20 hours a month just aggregating jobs and doing the hard work of researching the market for you. And I'm sending out a newsletter, come subscribe. And it's gone well. I mean, social media platforms have grown too. I mean, I have a Facebook group with about 3,500 people in it where people will just share jobs that they're looking for, share the openings they're looking for, and just connect. So it seems like there's been a real gap in this area. And I mean, I know other industries are like this too, where people just don't know where to look. And especially when it comes to values, like now more than ever with things like COVID, I mean, with the political sphere, political polarization we see, people want to work for like-minded people. And so that, I think that's part of why I've seen it grow so well, even though it's just like me and a laptop right now versus some organizations that are like 50 people working full time to collect jobs too.
Yeah, for sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of HR people or recruiters, like in that field of recruiting, seem to be more on the liberal side of things.
Yeah.
And all it takes nowadays, because social media and things like that, is a quick Google search, and they can just look up and see, hey, did this person vote Trump? Is this person a conservative? And like right away, it kind of dings you on getting like an interview or just a job in general.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the elements of that for sure. So like the HR world is like 60-30 female to male. So I mean, there's some elements of that mixed in there. Um, and you can't really look up who someone voted for unless you are paying for access to the certain technologies, or you're like with the state party and you have access. So typically that's not happening, but you definitely can see what people post on social media and what they believe. And you could theoretically discriminate based on that. But yeah, it ranges on the state too. I mean, so like political views aren't protected under the civil rights rules. And so like I could discriminate against someone because they support a football team I don't like, right? Depending on the state you're in and everything, right? So there is still like an element of that where it's like people could say, hey, this isn't a type of person I want to work with me, and they're not protected by race or religion or sexuality or like those type of things. So it does happen still. And so I do think it's important to like what I'm offering is I have this database of candidates who are pre-screened to be conservative. So if someone wants conservatives to work for them, they don't have to put out an Indeed post saying conservatives only at the top. They can look from a source of people who actually are like-minded. And so that saves a step. And yeah, I think it's just more pleasant for everyone involved if you source from those groups of people that you want to work for you versus putting it out and then really you only want a certain type of profile.
Yeah, because I think even at Christian company, quote unquote, Christian companies, you see a lot more of like a liberal drift. And all it takes, like for instance, like when Trump won the election, like I posted like an image of him saying, like, yes, like celebrating it. Somebody could just go on my Instagram and say like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Don't want that guy on here, like.
Yeah. And hopefully it's not happening to that degree, but like everyone thinks about themselves as being fair for the most part, unless they're just like really a malicious actor. But their version of what is acceptable on both sides could be much smaller than yours is. And they could say like, oh, like there could be some HR ladies be like, we don't hire Trump supporters. And that's something our managers didn't tell us to do, but we're going to enforce. But often it's just like, maybe you're being more controversial than someone else thinks you should be. I mean, it happens in the church to some extent too. Like I have a friend who was talking about how he was being considered to be a deacon at a PCA church. And when they saw a social media post they didn't like where he said that the left wants disabled babies to die. And he said in slightly more diplomatic terms than that, it's like, well, he's right. Like he is right that people who support abortion often do disproportionately abort Down syndrome babies, for example. But like the church was like, oh, that's too confrontational. We're not going to let this person be a deacon now. So like there is just the element of people have different moral standards of just how agreeable you should be on social media, for example.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy world. I mean, and to be honest though, it's like, you're looking for more conservative employees, for these employers too. So you have like a vetting process, and it's almost like, okay, we're just creating like a, what do you call it? Like an alternative system, for this. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
and nonprofits too, especially like if you have a mission or you're like faith based, you have more leeway to like look for those culture fit elements too.
mm,
Um, and I mean, other than that, like it depends on the business, but with nonprofits, it's a lot more specific. Where it's like, hey, we are a free market nonprofit. We actually do need someone who believes in capitalism, right? Or like we're a pro life nonprofit. We actually do need you to say that you don't support abortion in any circumstance. So like I
mhm,
think with nonprofits especially, it makes more sense. Whereas with maybe a construction company, you don't need them to share your geopolitical opinions, but you do need them to have certain ethical standards, and I mean to have a sense of morality, have a sense of hard work, have a sense of honesty, like those type of things.
yeah, for sure. And so you have this newsletter that you were, putting out, and it seemed like it grew pretty fast, right? Like, how long ago did you start? You said like 2
Yeah.
years?
So I started about 2 years ago, and I'm 200 people away from 6,000 subscribers, which has been
That's
cool.
crazy.
And I think what the reason why it's grown is just because it's practical. So what I do is, I mean, I'm curating this list of about 1,000 jobs that I'm making sure are updated within the last month by me. But what I'll do is I'll highlight 4 or 5 remote jobs, and then pretty much anyone could apply for the remote job theoretically. So I'll include like a sales job, a fundraising job, sometimes an accounting job, sometimes customer service, like stuff like that, where it's like there's someone out there. If you look at my newsletter, hopefully you can find something that you can see for free of like, oh, I could apply for that one. And then I have that larger one because obviously not everyone is going to fit every profile too. So trying to create more options there. And then of
Mhm.
course a lot of nonprofits aren't remote, so you do have to be near the state capital or the city they operate out of.
Okay. And then in addition to that, you said you started a recruiting firm there in Boise?
Yeah. Yeah. So I named it after Abraham Kuyper, actually, of the Dutch Netherlands. So it's called Kuyper Sherwood. And I'm really happy to help out anyone who's a Christian conservative, like business owner. But my specialty has been helping out policy groups in the conservative space. So, like free market groups, pro life groups, Christian policy groups like the Family Policy Alliance, that type of thing. Yes, I think the reason why people gravitate towards nonprofit work with all the challenges of probably longer
Mm,
hours, a little bit less than salary, is because God puts it on their heart to do so. The same reason people don't go into the ministry because they want to make
mhm,
a certain amount of money. They do is like God has told them, hey, it's on my heart. Like I want to be a pastor. This is what I'm called to do. This is where my skills are lined up. And so sometimes I talk about those things and how like nonprofits should pay people more and we should work more normal hours and 70 hours a week isn't normal long term, like that type of thing. But there's a reason why we gravitate to is we want to make a difference, and I think it's a good impulse. And there are opportunities out there where if you want to help with the homeless ministry, you can help with a good homeless ministry that is doing good things and isn't focusing on a harm reduction model or something, but instead has a high barrier to entry.
mhm,
It preaches the gospel. Same with pregnancy resource centers or policy groups or Christian education. Like there are a lot of cool opportunities that are making a difference and are really doing kingdom work. I named my recruiting firm after Abraham Kuyper because he famously said, "There's not one square inch over which Christ does not cry out mine." And there are all these different spheres that God has put us into working while we're here on this earth. And what you're called to do is something that there is an opportunity to do if it's a legit calling, and that's where God's give you both your interest and skill set. So
cool, cool. Yeah, sorry, I got another question for you. So, I saw that you're pretty involved with, like, the pro-life movement. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that was a big part of you moving to Boise, right? If I remember,
yeah,
you
so
posted that online?
Yeah, so I worked on political campaigns for about 3 years, and mostly worked in like pro-life primaries, like where it's like, hey, there's this Republican who voted to give 6 million to Planned Parenthood, and this Republican wants to replace him. Cool, I'm going to help the good guy.
Mm,
And but I've done like pro-life activism since I was in middle school. So like I did like the Day of Solidarity, where you put red tape on your mouth and you pass out information in middle school of like, this is what's going on. Their voices were silenced, so I'm going to silence myself for the day. I did Students for Life when I was at Liberty University, and we did prayer days each week. We went to the abortion facility on Saturdays and prayed and helped people. So like that's been a big part of my just professional journey is like, how do I have a passion to care about people with this issue and this thing's going on. How can I do it professionally? So I did campaigns. Then I worked for Students for Life of America, which is Kristen Hawkins, the president, and does a lot of reels on YouTube you see around often. But I did like special projects. I coordinate special projects for the C4, which is more on the political side. Ran student fellowships, and then I left for Boise because a couple reasons, but really it's like I'm in my 30s. I have kids. I have a beard, and I'm working with high school and middle school and college students. I'm like, at some point, I want to move into something else. And as much as like that mentorship role, I was like, I would like to move into a Christian policy group. So you're familiar with probably like James Dobson and the Focus on the Family with Adventures in Odyssey and all that. He had the vision to create 45 plus. I mean, really one in every state, right? There's about 45 state policy groups where you have pastors and churches kind of joining arms to have a lobbying voice. So lobbying for pro-life legislation, religious liberty, gender and sexuality issues, like saying, hey, transgender girls shouldn't be in the locker room with the other girls, like that type of basic common sense stuff, but that's rooted in biblical values. And so I was a chief of staff out here for the Idaho Family Policy Center for about 2 years. But through all those jobs, I was doing a lot of recruiting. And this last role, I was basically the human resources manager and did payroll, did hire 10 people in a year that were ranging from like legal to fundraising, that type of stuff. And even at Students for Life, I was mentoring all these college students for like, how do I work on the pro-life movement? And so I was helping them find the next job. Or I think about 20 people I worked with and I mentored through my fellowship then went to work for the organization. I helped hire the human resources manager, the executive director for the C4, that type of stuff. So I think that's how God's wired me, is to be that connector, that person who helps people find their next step. And so that's why it's been very natural these last 2 years to also be launching this newsletter, to be doing recruiting as a contractor, and be doing these other elements too.
What I wanted to say too was I wanted to say I think there's been like a culture shift in light of this whole Charlie Kirk thing. You're seeing now where people are losing their jobs for celebrating his death. You're seeing Jimmy Kimmel's show get canceled. And it almost seemed, and left's like, hey, you guys are all against cancel culture. What are you doing? But it almost seems like there's like an evening of the scales a little bit. We're bringing a little more like balance back to things, right? Like, I don't know. Do you have any comments on that? Like, what do you think?
I mean, there's a lot there, obviously Jimmy Kimmel and Charlie Kirk and the culture shift, but yeah, I think things are shifting back. Like I'm very optimistic about politics, and I've talked to a few people about this who were like a friend who's a systems admin who contracts for Republican nonprofits and campaign groups, right? I have friends who are political consultants, and I've talked to them that like, if you talked to us 5 years ago, we're like, everything is awful. Nothing is going well. If you talk to someone who's been working in this for 20, 30 years and like got started before the Tea Party, like, or like if you got started in the Bush era, right? Even, right? It's like, okay, everything's progressively gotten worse. We've progressively lost everything. And now these are actually on the horizon of like, oh, we win sometimes, or we are winning overall. And so, I mean, I definitely feel optimistic that like, a lot of it goes back to different generations, but I think that the baby boomers, there's a lot of great baby boomers, a lot of great people we should look up to, a lot of family members I love and respect. But they inherited the best economy in human history and squandered it. And the whole 20th century was one of the bloodiest centuries in human history because we were rejecting God, because we're embracing all kinds of wicked philosophies and foolish philosophies. I don't know. I was reading about Rousseau, and recently I thought he was just wrong, and I was like, this person's evil. I didn't even realize like some of that. I had a sanitized view of some of these figures that controlled the last 100 years with their philosophies. But all that being said, like I think as we see people experiencing bad times, which is our parents and us, and maybe even our children, I do think we're heading towards a turning point. And we're heading towards a future for our children, our grandchildren that'll be better. And I think there's hope that we can build that future. So I'm in Idaho, so I'm in like the most conservative state in the country right now. We have 85% control of the state legislature by Republicans. And so here we don't even care about the Democrats. It's moderate versus conservative, basically. But like I see our state, every time something bad happens with Pride, for example, they pass into a law. So Pride here is very watered down and restricted because like, okay, last year we got in trouble because all of the trans men were showing their breasts. So now we can't do that. And it's like each year it takes a step back towards sanity, where now it's just like a county fair with lots of gay people. Like it's much more tame than something you'd see in California, for example. Um, I mean, with abortion, like seeing Roe v. Wade like reversed is crazy. I mean, I remember being in middle school and people telling me when I was doing activism, this is never going to happen. You should just accept it. I remember being lobbying in Virginia and people telling me like, you can't say you're going to reverse Roe v. Wade. That's not going to happen. And then 2 years later, we did, right? So I think that's such a seismic thing where something like Obergefell is possible to be repealed, where we just assumed we'd lost that battle and like things were just getting worse. I mean, I think we can rebuild things and not just rebuild things to back where they were in the 90s, but actually rebuild a Christian foundation for our country and recognizing mistakes of the past and things we shouldn't repeat. But like, I think we can rebuild the Christian foundation that our nation was founded on. Like, I think that's absolutely possible.
Yeah. No, I remember a family member of mine who has now become, a never Trumper and more liberal. And I remember somebody saying like, how could you vote, for the Democratic Party because, because of their views on abortion? That's like a primary thing that they often sell, under the guise of women's rights.
Yeah.
But her response is like, well, I just don't think we'll see, Roe v. Wade overturned in our lifetimes. I just don't think it's going to happen, So as much as we want to, I think there's like other more, in their words, important things.
Yeah.
And then we saw it overturned, and I was like, well, there you go, like eat your words, like we got it done, and we're going to keep getting things done, and then the same thing with Obergefell too, man. I remember, what was it, like Prop 8 in California?
Yeah, I was in middle school
yeah.
during Prop 8 in California, so I remember that too.
You were in school in California over here?
Yeah, for middle school and part of high school. But yeah, I mean, I was there in 8th grade when Prop 8 was happening, and I remember my neighbor got his signs vandalized, and we were debating it in gym class, and it was crazy. I mean, it was like the people of California voted for traditional marriage multiple times too. I think it was 2 or 3 times, not just Prop 8. And then the courts just blocked it. And now now the political landscape's of course changed in California today, but I don't know, it was a fascinating time. And then how quickly things shifted from that to gay marriage being legalized across the country. I mean, it's less than a decade, right? It was, I think it would have been 5 years, right, since from Prop 8 to gay marriage, Obergefell, basically.
What part of California were you in?
I was in Santa Clarita.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too far from where I'm at, because I'm in the Central Valley.
Oh, wow, cool.
So yeah, in Visalia. So think like an hour 15 north of Bakersfield, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my dad worked in Burbank, so he would commute up there closer to you. So
cool. Yeah, but I remember going to like the local government building with my pastor and my dad, and my pastor gave like a little speech about it, and then what happened, but yeah, I just think that now we're starting to just see a flip of things, and I'm here for it. I'm happy for it. I did public school my whole life, and when it got time to, my kids were of school age, it was like, do we homeschool? Do we, what do we do? Because there was just all those crazy videos you were seeing online of like teachers, hiding things from the parents and, talking to the kids and like grooming them and stuff. So luckily we didn't even know about this, but there's like a really good Christian school here in town, and we got them like plugged into it, and they've been there ever since. It's a sacrifice financially, but it's definitely worth it. But it's just, things weren't the same, when I was in school. Like,
that's just such a great example of the culture shift. I mean, even like the classical education movement, the homeschool movement. I mean, those are things that happened within a generation. I mean, there's people here in Idaho who were thrown in jail for homeschooling when they were raising their kids. They're now grandparents. There's people like Doug Wilson up in Moscow who like started this classical education movement basically, and he didn't even know about homeschooling at the time when he did it, is what I heard him saying recently. And now there's like 500 part of his association and hundreds more that are doing their own thing. So yeah, I think there's a vibe shift. I think things are going better, and I think I don't know. I feel very optimistic. Not that things are going well now, but things will go well in the future for our children and grandchildren for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't know how old your kids are, but are you? Because does Logos have a school in Boise, or is it only in Moscow? Like, are you guys going to send them to
So
there, or are you going
there's
to
actually,
homeschool?
it's called the Ambrose School down here, and
Okay.
it's bigger than Logos. I think it's like 3 or 4 times the size, and it's one of the flagship ones. Like there's some really nice ones in Texas, but apart from Texas, I think it's the biggest one in the country and like one of the most respected. But there's like 4 other classical schools out here. Not all of them are Christian, but there's like 4 others, and then there's a really vibrant homeschool community. So my kids are 2 and 4, so they're a little bit young. So, but we have them in a co-op where it's like preschool, and then my wife can have other people watching the kids, and she can teach astronomy to other kids. And so there's some good options. Like we're responsible to give our kids a Christian education, but like there's flexibility. I just think like the overall movement is such an encouraging development. And I mean, even like I was public school too. I had friends who were homeschooled, and it was clear to me, I was like, dang, I should have done that. Right? I feel like everyone's figuring it out all at once. And I don't, not that thing. I don't know your view of eschatology, I guess, but whether it's on mill or post mill, like I think things are kind of cyclical and moving towards like an economy moving down and then moving up. And so you're going to have bad periods and good periods regardless. But I think things are overall getting better in so many different ways. I mean, you look at the spread of Christianity early on to now. I mean, it went from 1 man to what, 3 billion, right? It's pretty impressive thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at post mill there for a while, and then I was like, looking more at all mill. I grew up dispensational, like in the Calvary Chapel world. Love Calvary Chapel. Still have family a part of it. But I think I'm more leaning on mill, maybe more like
Okay.
an optimistic on mill lately. But again, optimistic, because I think we're seeing like a revival right now, like this
Yeah, there's
past
good
2
periods and bad periods regardless. So
Yeah, like this past 2 weeks, right? Like how many people were like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to church for the first time," or "I'm returning to church after so many years," and they're like sharing videos and pictures and in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. I think that's something we've been praying about for a while. And like Gen Z, I think I saw the numbers is like really high number of attending churches, right?
yeah, no, I mean, I'm like on the low end of being a millennial. I'm like 2 or 3 years away from being Gen Z, but yeah, I mean, I feel like our generation, slightly above, had a lot of like, I don't know, there's a lot of secularism, a lot of like de-Christianization happening, and I think the generation below us is reacting to that, saying, "Wow, that didn't work." There's
Yeah.
something wrong with the boomers. There's also something wrong with every generation between then. And so there's kind of a back and forth where you react to the worst thing you see of the other generation in the next one. And it's kind of things are, I don't know, it's an interesting cycle of how people react. And I was reading that most people are more similar to their grandparents' generation than they are to their parents' generation, just because of the way that cycle kind of goes forward and back,
Hmm. Yeah. And then you see all the return to like the trad life, and everyone's trying to like buy land and be farmers and stuff.
A lot of that out here in Idaho for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could do that, but yeah. We don't live in the smallest town, but it's not the biggest either.
Yeah.
Maybe the
Well,
goal
hey,
would be to buy land someday.
your journey in ministry, like, I mean, what's that been like? Because I've every time I've talked to a pastor and I've talked about like nonprofit work, it's like I see all these parallels of what it looks like. I mean, what are the things you've seen when it comes to finding work as a pastor, advancing into that like vocation? Like, what are some observations you can share with that?
Yeah. So I wasn't a pastor. I wasn't ordained. So I got my bachelor's in biblical studies from Moody. I did it online, so I didn't actually go to the school in Chicago. And then I worked for a church for like 6 years, and doing more like administrative work, and
Okay.
was ordained a deacon there. And then there was like some drama basically, and I was applying for like the elder process, like the elder candidacy, and then all kinds of weird stuff happened, and I eventually get like pushed out basically. But since then, finding work, I guess, was like, what do I do? Because I had a bachelor's degree in biblical studies, like, and so I had done like work before, like I worked at a call center. I worked for like the YMCA, doing like after school programs for like high school kids in Stockton, which is where I was living at the time. And yeah, so I apply, or me and my wife were praying about like where we're going to move basically after all that happened. And my parents live here in Visalia. And so that was an option because I'd like to have my kids around their grandparents and stuff. And the university I almost went to right out of high school. I just like went to their website and applied for a job there. And it was almost like tailor made, for me, because it was like a project manager position, and a lot of the administrative work I was doing at the church kind of like translated to that.
Cool.
And so I was just like, okay, like it's a Christian university, it's project management, it's marketing. Let's
Which
just see
school
if
is
this.
this?
It's a Fresno Pacific University.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was like, I got a pretty good chance of getting it. And sure enough, I just followed up on my application, kind of bugged them, got some interviews, got the job. But honestly, like there was so many other jobs that I had applied for during that time, including churches, and they just were like into the void, like never hearing back. And yeah, I think it was just God's providence to just put me where I was, because
Cool.
yeah, it was just like there was no other jobs responding to me, at that time. It was just like just that. But again, you have to like also reinvent yourself. Like I went and put myself through a course through Coursera. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like an
Yeah.
online school. Yeah. And so I got like a project manager certificate with that, and that kind of helped, like me and my skills, and I think makes me a little more valuable in my field. So if someone looks at me and says, "Oh, you have a bachelor's degree in biblical studies," well, I also have a certificate in project management. Like
Yeah, that's helpful. I
yeah,
think that's one of the big things, especially with like, I mean, working in a church or a nonprofit, is you often do a little bit of everything. And so you're not really specialized in anything, but you're a generalist. We're like, yeah, I managed the CRM to process donations or tithes, or I did some marketing, I did some of the social media platforms, and we grew it. And it's like, well, okay, I have like entry level experience in 8 things, and I can manage people. Or for me, it was like, oh, but I like recruiting people. That's what I'm good at, is that connection thing. So one thing I've noticed is it's helpful to like change your titles just to explain what you did. So like, for example, one role I was a chief of staff, and a chief of staff can mean anything because it's project based and you're just supporting the executive and whatever they need the most help with. And so like 70% of my responsibilities were human resources related. So it's okay, I'm a human resources manager. So I think that's part of that helps people with that slump, or like, I know pastors who are systems admins as well, for example, and like helping to explain that in the title, like, hey, I'm a pastor, associate pastor, and systems admin, or like there's ways to really emphasize the experience that you're gaining that's kind of parallel to your main responsibility.
yeah. I'm just very optimistic about where we're at in our country. I think what you're doing is really good work. Getting people plugged in into good companies. Good conservative people. So, is there anything that you want to like plug as far as like where people can find you? If they can sign up for your newsletter, or get in touch with your recruiting firm that you started.
Yeah, so my recruiting firm is Kuiper Sherwood. So KUYPRSHERWOOD.com. And so you can go there if you want to reach out about recruiting services and getting assistance with finding the right staff you need. And then my newsletter, if you go there, it'll share links to where you can give me your resume, where you can join the Facebook group. But my newsletter is on Substack, and it's if you just type in the conservative job board on Google, it'll pop up. It outranks some like other websites, where mine is really it's a LinkedIn newsletter and a Substack newsletter. You can subscribe to either one, but it'll pop up when you search for it.
Cool. And I'll make sure to put those in the description too. That way they're easier to find for people. And yeah, I thank you again for coming on, man.
Sounds good, Aaron. Thanks for your
Yeah,
time.